For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Remember how in Russia, Allatra was labeled a Ukrainian and American cult formed by the State Security Service of Ukraine. At the same time, in Ukraine, they called it a Russian, Putin's sect. But very few people wondered, why is this happening? Who benefits from it? Who's behind it? This bizarre, deliberately created paradox led to serious consequences for many. Persecution, ruined reputations, and criminal cases. Some people ended up behind bars. Others were forced to flee their countries. As a result, many of you probably subconsciously regard me as a cult member. Whether pro-Putin or pro-CIA, doesn't matter. Just another brainwashed cultist, right? Well, I'm not here to defend myself. On the contrary, in this video, I'm going to show you how you were not just brainwashed, no, you were mind-fucked. And more importantly, who did it, how they did it, and why. I'll give you evidence, step by step, just like always. The time has come, and yes, it's also time to help law enforcement agencies and investigative authorities see the full scope of the problem. This series is especially for you. First, I'll give you a bit of background. For those seeing me for the first time, I've been digging into this investigation for over a year and a half. I've already released 23 episodes. And honestly, when I looked closely at these photos, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. How could these bearded dandelions from RACIRS possibly have that kind of hidden power? This level of influence, such sophisticated methods of manipulation and deception, and such brutally effective techniques for controlling public opinion. But yes, they have managed to mess with the minds of the entire Russia. They succeeded in forcing everyone to play by their rules. Only over time, as I kept digging deeper year after year, fact by fact and person by person, the full picture started to come into focus. And certainly, the Impact documentary released last summer really helped. Plus, there are videos featuring Igor Chalakian and Dushan, as well as investigative articles by journalists of the Act Files portal, which are published quite often. Now, this whole picture is starting to come together, thanks to the efforts of people who don't even know each other and live on different sides of the planet. But they get it. They already understand what anti-cultism really is, how sophisticated and destructive it is, and how, throughout history, it has often been a prelude to genocide. It also took me a long time to understand the role anti-cultists have played in trying to destabilize and destroy Ukraine. And not just Ukraine, by the way. Their reach is much broader and much more global. Yet somehow it's all hidden. Although it's in plain sight, it's right there, but nobody notices it. But if you really look in the genocide of the Ukrainian people that is happening right now, the responsibility of anti-cultists is massive. One day I hope we'll get to the bottom of all of it. In this episode, however, our task is to highlight and come to understand how one of their agents, a pro-Russian saboteur, operated inside Ukraine and what she managed to do. Before we dive in, I'd like to thank the SBU, Ukraine's security service, and the investigators and judges involved. I honestly don't know their names, but many thanks to those who have managed to keep a clear mind, their honor and conscience intact even in these tough times. And here's the biggest news today. An official criminal case has finally been initiated against the RACIRS agent in Ukraine. It's not yet listed in the public registry from what I've been told, but it's already in the legal database accessible to attorneys. In the upcoming videos, we're going to start unraveling this mess and shedding light on the dark corners. Because this isn't just some minor offense under Article 161 of the Criminal Code. No. is Article 111, High Treason. Of course, the final word will be with the court. But from my side, I sincerely hope that the evidence presented in these videos will be enough to make sure justice is served, and that those who worked for the aggressor country for a long time will finally be held accountable. Before we dive into the case of this Russian mole in Ukraine, let me say that we've gathered a lot of material on this individual. How exactly we'll structure it, how many episodes it's going to take, I'm not sure yet. If you're an investigator or you're just trying to understand what RACIRS is, or who Alexander Dvorkin really is, I already have a few videos on my channel about that. But they only scratch the surface. So I strongly recommend you to watch the Impact documentary. It's a must. And then check out the website actfiles.org. How to look up information there. It's simple, just type Dvorkin in the search bar and start going through the articles. I don't know who those analysts are, but whoever they are titans in analysis, seriously. They sift through mountains of info, and they do it professionally, pulling data from web archives, taking screenshots, analyzing, and building rock-solid evidence. You can also search for RACIRS there. That's the Russian Association of Centers for the Study of Religions and Sects. Don't even bother Googling it. You'll find nothing about RACIRS and Dvorkin. Everything has been erased or replaced in the search rankings with PR fluff and positive spin. But on ActFiles, you just type in RACIRS and boom, it's all there. I don't speak or read English, so I use my browser's translator to read their articles. And I know what you might be thinking. If we've had this information all along, why didn't we say anything sooner? But the thing is, we weren't silent. I've been covering Dvorkin and RACIRS for a year and a half. I released 23 episodes already. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, there have been about 70 searches at our participants' homes and offices. And we didn't go public right away for two reasons. Firstly, we didn't want to interfere. And secondly, we didn't want to put anyone in danger. But now, with an official case opened, we finally have the right to speak openly. Okay, that's it for the intro. Let's get to the main part. Iryna Kremenovska, a covert agent of Russian influence and a key operative within the anti-cult organization RACIRS. For years, she carried out subversive activities on Ukrainian soil in the interests of the aggressor country, Russia. A brief biography. She's a lawyer. In 2014, she moved from occupied Donetsk to Kiev. According to some unconfirmed sources, she had worked in the police in Donetsk. So, our first task is to highlight Iryna Kremenovska's connection to RACIRS, the Russian Association of Centers for the Study of Religions and Sects, and present evidence of this link. After that, we will examine her actions aimed at undermining the national security of Ukraine, specific crimes, and provide corresponding evidence as well. And probably in this episode, we'll touch briefly on many points so as not to drag it out, because it looks like the video will be quite long as it is. We'll go into more detail in the next part. Let's rewind the story a bit. From 2011 to 2018, RACIRS had an official representative in Ukraine. That was the All-Ukrainian Apologetics Center, abbreviated AUAC, or VATs in Ukrainian, under the Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, the center named after John Chrysostom. According to some sources, AUAC had about 20 diocesan centers. Their website, apologet.ua, ceased operations in 2018. The head of the center was a Bishop Jonah Cherepanov of Abukov, while the movement coordinator was a Russian agent, political strategist, specifically a black PR strategist, and a separatist from Zaporizhia named Pavel Broid, an official RACIRS agent. The same Pavel Broid who was exposed in the hacker leak known as the Surkov leaks. If anyone remembers, there is a relevant large analytical article on the website ActFiles. Broid was directly involved in destabilizing Ukraine and undermining national security. He openly reported about that to his Moscow handlers. We'll definitely come back to him later because his case clearly illustrates the kind of subversive activity RACIRS agents were conducting in Ukraine and shows their goals and objectives. Pavel Broid himself described everything. The website apologet.in.ua has long since been taken down, but on the Facebook group among administrators of the All-Ukrainian Apologetics Center, we find Rogatin, another Russian influence agent who appeared in the Impact documentary.
One of the first to spread the idea that Ukraine is afflicted by Satanism, which is linked to Nazism, was Vladimir Rogatin, a corresponding member of the European Federation of Centers of Research and Information on Sectarianism, FECRIS. By a remarkable coincidence, this individual conducts his activities in Ukraine, while also being an active mouthpiece for Russian anti-cultists. In 2014, he began explaining the cause of the Euromaidan by attributing it to the harmful influence of new religious movements. He added that they were also behind what happened in Ukraine in 2004, namely, the Orange Revolution.
Discrimination has reached a qualitatively different level. We must acknowledge that it wasn't just Orthodox Christians and Uniates. There were also neo-pagans, Baptists, and various movements involved in the Maidan protests.
This completely aligned with the opinions of FSB Vice President Alexander Dvorkin, who had previously made similar statements.
We saw that the first Maidan was driven entirely by neo-Pentecostals, who were the main active forces. The second Maidan had a more complex religious component involving not only cults, but also the Uniate Church, which belongs to the Roman Catholic Church. However, Ukrainian Uniates are a special case, and in many ways, in general, they have, you could say, a cultist mindset as well. Well, there were also neo-pagans and Scientologists, too.
In 2014, Rogatin took part in an anti-cult conference in the Russian city of Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk, where he sat at the same table with the top leaders of RACIRS, Alexander Dvorkin, Roman Silantiev, and the lawyer of RACIRS, Korelov. That's him on the far right in the photo. The All-Ukrainian Apologetic Center ceased its activities in 2018. Broid disappeared much earlier, and Rogatin and many others also fled from Ukraine before that. But Iona Cherepanov continues to serve in his church organization. Then, in 2017, a new figure entered the scene, Iryna Kremenovska. In general, she started doing the same thing that the AUAC did, but under a different sign. Based on the facts we'll present in this video, it becomes clear that Kremenovska basically took over the baton from Broid. She coordinated a network of information portals that continued promoting the Russian-aligned narrative of RACIRS in Ukraine. Let's list them. Channel number 1, Center for Economic and Legal Research, CELR, which was registered in 2017. Its official website, el-research.center, began publishing actively in 2018, and its director is Iryna Kremenovska. Channel number 2, a bulletin, Speak Up, vilnislovo.com. It was launched in 2017, though began publishing more actively in 2018. Kremenovska is its editor-in-chief. Channel number 3, Anti-Secta. This openly pro-Russian anti-cult portal also launched in 2017 with Kremenovska as its most frequent author. Channel number 4, antisecta.org, that still maintains a group on the Russian social network Odnoklasniki. Now let's draw connections between these 4 projects. In 2017, Kremenovska, together with her associate Alexei Svyatogor, founded the Center for Economic and Legal Research with its website el-research.center. Kremenovska is listed as its director and Svyatogor as her deputy. Among CELR's partners, we found a non-profit organization, Anti-Secta, with the website antisecta.org. The website no longer exists, but thanks to the Wayback Machine, we can look into its history. And through the archived history, we arrive at some very interesting discoveries and connections. The Center for Economic and Legal Research, CELR, is the founding organization behind the website Speak Up, vilnislovo.com. On the 2019 version of vilnislovo.com, CELR is explicitly listed as the founder. However, in the 2020 version, this mention disappears. In addition, until 2023, on the website Speak Up, it was indicated that Iryna Kremenovska is its editor-in-chief. This suggests that the website's main content was published under her supervision and with her approval. From 2023 onward, the formal editor-in-chief is listed as Raymond Kalambe, one of the website contributors. But here's the most surprising part. Raymond Kalambe is currently serving a prison sentence. He was convicted and sentenced in Ukraine to life imprisonment. I wonder, what was he convicted for? There's a section for him as a journalist on the website, mostly filled with writings about prison life. Alexei Svyatogor, Kremenovska's deputy, mentions in one of his articles that Kalambe has already spent over 20 years behind bars. So how could someone like that man become the editor-in-chief of Speak Up? What does he lose, right? He's already serving life. By the end of this video, once you see Kremenovska and Svyatogor in person, you will understand how something like this could happen. Let's continue. It's also worth noting that the domain vilnuslovo.com was registered in Iryna Kremenovska's name. All three projects are deeply intertwined. On the website Vilnuslovo, there were news feeds from ELRC, Anti-Secta and CELAR. There was even an anti-secta banner displayed. This all seems fairly straightforward, especially considering that Kremenovska publicly presented herself as an active anti-cult advocate. She even compiled and posted a blacklist of cults and sects on her website, vilnuslovo.com, which is a typical ambitious move characteristic of followers of anti-cult ideology. Let me remind you that similar blacklists were compiled by Walter Kunneth in Nazi Germany, Alexander Dvorkin in Russia on his website iryny.ru, and his follower Konstantin Putnik from the Chelyabinsk branch of RACIRS. We have a separate episode dedicated to the latter. This former bread factory loader stood out by going as far as to blacklist academicians, one of whom was even a Nobel Prize winner. Now comes a more intriguing part where we will uncover Iryna Kremenovska's link to the Russian Association RACIRS. An article published on CELR website quoted, word for word, a passage from the website of Alexander Dvorkin, that is the Center for Religious Studies in the name of Irenaeus of Lyons, iryny.ru, which outrightly supports an anti-Ukrainian stance and operates in the interests of the Russian Orthodox Church, the Moscow Patriarchate. Here's the quote, critical thinking is an essential trait of a free person. Let's not give up our freedom so easily. The exact same phrase appeared on Kremenovska's website, just translated into Ukrainian, identical in wording. In 2018, the Sailor website announced the launch of a long-term joint project called Svobodny Razum, Free Mind, in collaboration with Anti-Secta. Ukrainian citizens were encouraged to seek help from Anti-Secta and visit their website, antisecta.org. And here are her own words. Let's listen to Kremenovska's direct appeal to Anti-Secta.
And besides our publication's website, there's also Anti-Secta. You can download the electronic version of the book on the Anti-Secta website. I will leave the link for you in the description of this video. Go to the page and there is a download button.
By the way, Anti-Secta is not only a partner of our Center for Economic and Legal Research, they are also our friends.
So, what exactly is this Trojan anti-cult horse? Antisecta.org is basically a Russian propaganda website, backing the ideology of RACIRS and the Russian Orthodox Church. Let's take a closer look. If you analyze the content and structure of the website, it's pretty obvious that this project is basically a rebirth of the All-Ukrainian Apologetics Center, named after John Chrysostom, which used to be the official representative entity of RACIRS in Ukraine before it was shut down in 2018. That center was run by a now-exposed Russian agent, Pavel Broid. I'll delve into his story in upcoming episodes. It definitely needs more public exposure. On antisecta.org, we can see quotes by Alexander Dvorkin, and even excerpts from his own website, iryny.ru. In brief, it's a direct ideological and methodological continuation of RACIRS. But what's most interesting here is the Partners section, titled Fighters Against Sects. A real gem, as they would say in Odessa. Let's take a closer look because now we're getting into hard evidence. First up, Viktor Yolkin, a member of the pro-Russian radical party called Latvian Russian Union and led by the well-known Russian propagandist Andrei Mamykin. In 2014, Yolkin openly supported Russia's aggression. Here's a quote from him attacking Ukraine. Yolkin is the head of the anti-cult movement in Latvia and a member of an international anti-cult organization where from 2009 to 2021, Alexander Dvorkin served as vice president. And here are the photos. Look like Dvorkin and Yolkin standing together. If you listen closely to what Yolkin says, you will quickly realize that he's just a parrot repeating RACIRS's anti-cult jargon word for word. By the way, actfiles.org has 2 solid articles about the Russian anti-cult presence in Latvia. Let me share a quick note from them. In 2018, Yolkin and a guy named Nikiforov organized an international FECRIS conference in Riga, where a bunch of anti-cult leaders from around the world showed up. All right, now let's hear exactly what Viktor Yolkin had to say. Quote, First of all, it is necessary to introduce the concept totalitarian sect into our legislation. Heads up. That's exactly what Pavel Broid and Iryna Kremenovska were promoting in Ukraine. Let's keep reading. An interdepartmental commission of experts must be established because some sects and cults are registered as public organizations. We need to tighten control over their goals and objectives in the law on public organizations. We call on all politicians to publicly declare their views and intentions, says Yolkin. Makes you wonder, are those even his own words? Or is Yolkin just another mouthpiece for Alexander Dvorkin, another tentacle of the same octopus, just like Broid, Kremenovska, and others? And note, this is already starting to look like a strategy to infiltrate government systems in other countries with RACIRS agents. What do anti-cultists actually need this for? Let me take a quick detour here. The answer might be obvious. If Dvorkin succeeded in Russia, why not try to spread the anti-cult influence worldwide using this kind of covert strategy? If you pay attention to what RACIRS members say, you'll notice they all sound like they are reading from the same script. Their actions are almost identical too, like they're following a single manual. But here's the big question. Who is the mastermind behind that manual? Back in 2009, RACIRS took the lead of the Expert Council on Religious Evaluation under the Russian Ministry of Justice, and it was from that moment that Russia started slipping away from democracy towards a repressive, totalitarian regime. That Expert Council basically became the gatekeeper for all religious life in Russia, while the Minister of Justice, Alexander Konovalov, who, by the way, was Alexander Dvorkin's student at St. Tikhon's Orthodox University, not only put Dvorkin in charge, but also let him bring his own people, hardcore anti-cult operatives from RACIRS, into that council. Moreover, Konovalov unexpectedly expanded the powers of that very expert council. Just think about this. An anti-cult council, led by a man who had a psychiatric diagnosis in his youth, was made the chief inquisitor of Russia, and the council was allowed to investigate activities, teachings, literature, and even religious rituals of registered religious organizations. The council was authorized to verify information, assess its accuracy, and, attention, even give recommendations to the Ministry of Justice. So basically, this so-called advisory body became a watchdog with real teeth. It had the power to influence government policy. Let me spell it out even more clearly. A man with a manic obsession to label anyone he doesn't like as a cultist or sectarian, anyone who isn't Orthodox Christian, and then destroy them, lock them up, and erase them, just like we're seeing today with Jehovah's Witnesses and many others. So, that same mentally unstable and xenophobic man was made a mega expert, an arbiter, a supreme judge behind the scenes, shaping the direction of the entire country and ruling over religions and the lives of millions of people. I'm not exaggerating. Look back at what happened in 2009. There was a massive public outcry. Scholars of religion and human rights activists launched a campaign called No to the Inquisition. They gathered over 12,000 signatures, appealed to the president and to the minister, but the government just ignored them. Those people predicted the collapse of religious freedom, the start of religious repression, and the end of democracy, and that's exactly what happened. Go look it up. You'll see one of the key reasons why Russia so quickly turned into what's now becoming the foundation for the Fourth Reich. And since Dvorkin succeeded in this in one country, and no one even realized how, then why not try the same scenario in other countries? Sorry for the side note, but without it you cannot really understand who Dvorkin is what RACIRS is, and what it means when they gain power over people's minds. They have actually changed the laws to serve their own goals. They have trampled their own constitution and shoved it where the sun doesn't shine. They have twisted Orthodox Christianity beyond recognition. They have thoroughly brainwashed the population. But that's a whole big topic in itself. Let's go back to Iryna Kremenovska. Latvia and Ukraine, Dvorkin, Broid, and Kremenovska. What do you think of such an infiltration strategy? They spark anti-cult hysteria through mass media, stir up fear, and then start slipping into political circles, even into law enforcement. They push for interdepartmental commissions to fight sects and cults, grant themselves special powers, and change laws. In the end, they position themselves as scientific experts, mega experts, controlling religious and civic organizations from behind the scenes, all the while covertly carrying out the agenda of Alexander Dvorkin or the Russian Orthodox Church, the Moscow Patriarchate, destabilizing a country from within. Sounds far-fetched? It's actually quite real. All right, let's keep going. Another partner, Anti-Sect, the anti-cult website created by students and alumni of the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology, MIPT. By the way, this institute is involved in developing and manufacturing military tech that Russia is currently using against Ukraine. In 2021, the United States imposed sanctions on MIPT. It's in a BBC article, by the way. There's a lot that could be said about this institute. They develop munitions, conduct military research, and so on. Maybe that seems off topic, but still worth noting. Now let's look at anti-sect's partners. There's the well-known Russian anti-cultist Yevgeny Volkov, Dvorkin's website irini.ru, Radonej Radio, and others. Next up, another partner, CELR, the Center for Economic and Legal Research, headed by Iryna Kremenovska. What exactly did the center do? Its stated goal was to develop legal frameworks for countering totalitarian organizations and destructive cults in Ukraine, promote changes and amendments to Ukraine's legislation. Exactly what I just talked about, right there in black and white. This kind of phrasing is a dead giveaway, a classic marker of organizations operating under RACIRS' coordination, and it carries a serious threat not just to democracy in Ukraine, but in every country across the world. Russia's experience, Dvorkin's so-called expert council, is a textbook case of how these kinds of legal initiatives become tools for civil society. The key mechanism behind any anti-cult legislation is always the same. Set up an expert council. And suddenly you've got a group with virtually unchecked power to decide which organizations or groups of citizens are labeled destructive or totalitarian. Giving that much authority to a single body creates a dangerous hole in a country's security system. It becomes an open door for influence, especially Russian influence, because they will use it to push their own interests through those councils, which can have major consequences for national security. In my opinion, this is quite obvious. What actually happened in Russia? Let's try to figure it out again. Under the pretext of fighting sects and cults, they began to trample on basic rights, the right to freedom of conscience and freedom of belief. They adopted laws severely limiting human rights. Then repressions began. From the looks of it, Iryna Kremenovska tried to promote the same scenario in Ukraine, following Pavel Broid, executing RACIRS' agenda, and continuing Dvorkin's legacy. Why is anti-cult legislation, RACIRS' core strategy, so dangerous for Ukraine? Let's try to answer this question too. The next partner of Kremenovska is Alexander Dvorkin himself. This man has openly spoken out against Ukraine's independence, again and again. There are countless examples of him dehumanizing Ukrainian politicians and the Ukrainian people, so he's not just a propagandist, but a hidden architect of genocide, a key ideologue behind it. The vast network of RACIRS centers Dvorkin created, strategically placed under missionary departments of the Moscow Patriarchate, is basically an FSB-linked intelligence network that carries out strategic objectives of Russian special services within Russia and beyond. A next partner is the Center for Religious Studies in the name of Irenaeus of Lyons, founded by none other than Alexander Dvorkin in 1993. He is still in charge today, never stepping down. The information published on Dvorkin's website, Iryna.ru, forms an ideological backbone for the entire RACIRS network. Every group and every individual under their influence echoes the same narrative. There are a lot of them, and trust me, you won't find a full list on Google. Another partner is the information portal anti-Secta.ru, run by Russian priest and RACIR Alexander copies and pastes the rhetoric of the Center for Religious Studies in the name of Irenaeus of Lyons, including content openly aimed at undermining Ukraine's sovereignty and national security, all in favor of promoting the dominance of the Moscow Patriarchate, the Russian Orthodox Church. Officially, Alexander Kuzmin is RACIRS' executive secretary. The next partner is Ukrsekta.info, or Sectarian Ukraine, a propaganda website created by RACIRS' agent Pavel Broid. It's a straight-up Russian disinformation weapon, again tied to Dvorkin. Back in 2014, this website was cheerleading Russia's military aggression, spreading lies about the Ukrainian armed forces, and aggressively campaigning against Ukraine's religious independence. Shockingly enough, this website is still active. The latest article was published in November 2024. I wonder, what are they hoping for? It's not hard to figure out who's behind it. The domain Ukrsekta.info is registered in Russia under the name Alexander Haiduk, former editor-in-chief of Zerkalo Zaporozhye, a Zaporizhia-based newspaper. Here's more. On the footer of that newspaper's website, there's a direct link to Sectarian Ukraine. The situation gets even clearer if we refer to a 2008 forum post from Zaporizhia, where Broid and Haiduk were called a super crappy PR team, which pretty much confirms they knew each other well. And by the way, they lived together in the same apartment. Finally, let's talk about FSB, the European Federation of Centers of Research and Information on Cults and Sects, which is under heavy Russian influence. Alexander Dvorkin served as vice president of FSB for a whole 12 years. That's no small role. Dvorkin's destructive influence was so blatant it was even flagged in United Nations documents. An international research team, including top Ukrainian scholars, conducted a comprehensive analysis of RACIRS' key figures embedded in FSB, in particular Alexander Dvorkin and his close associate Alexander Novopashin, RACIRS vice president. The web portal antisecta.org has been copy-pasting content from Iryna Kremenovska's personal website, Vilnislovo. Notably, Kremenovska has been the most frequent author on that portal, where materials are word-for-word aligned with RACIRS' narratives. Kremenovska's dominance on the portal clearly indicates that she influenced the editorial line of this pro-Russian resource. Now, the cherry on top. The antisecta.org group on Russian social media Odnoklasniki. The group is called Anti-Sect, Orthodox Faith. The website's URL is right there in the group description. The group page contains videos and articles that openly support the Russian Orthodox Church and the Russian patriotic movement, and even include birthday greetings to Vladimir Putin. What do you think of such evidence? Shouldn't this be a ground for charges under Article 111 of the Criminal Code? The exact same charges Kremenovska tried to slap on Allatra in Ukraine. Ironic, isn't it? That's Dvorkin's classic trick. Accuse others of exactly what you're guilty of. Please, memorize this trick. Many scholars and human rights advocates have pointed out this tactic at various times. A separate part of Kremenovska's subversive activity is her close collaboration with a radical Russian propagandist, Alexander Neveyev, whose writings are regularly published on RACIRS' platforms. Neveyev is a hardcore anti-cultist.
I'm your great-grandfather. I really wanted to have your grandmother. When I was in Sevastopol, I slept with your mother.
He is familiar with Dvorkin and supports his ideological line. This can be seen in a concrete example. the publication about the alleged harm of yoga practice for prisoners. It would seem that Mizulina and Dvorkin have written raving nonsense. Everyone laughs. But the serious expert Neveyev supported them. By the way, let me remind you that Alexander Neveyev participated in the discrediting of the *ALLATRA movement by RACIRS agents in 2020. On the Vilnius-Lovo website, where Kremenovska is both an author and the chief editor, Neveyev's name appears dozens of times. Moreover, the anti-cult portal ansobor.ru, run by RACIRS Vice President Alexander Novopashin, posted a copy of an article from Vilnius-Lovo that includes photos of Kremenovska and Neveyev, as well as a direct link to a Ukrainian website. I'd like to remind you that this is the same Novopashin who referred to Ukrainians as Nazis, Satanists, and even cannibals. Let me also remind you that the website of the missionary department of the Novosibirsk Diocese of the Russian Orthodox Church, headed by Archpriest Alexander Novopashin, is the second most significant platform of RACIRS. It was on this site in 2022 that a document titled Guide for Ukrainian Citizens on Organizing Civil Resistance to the Puppet Government in Kiev was published, which remains accessible to this day. This manual is essentially a practical guide for carrying out sabotage in Ukraine during the Russian army's invasion, a direct call to action during wartime. The fact that such an informational product was promoted by an official RACIRS platform only reinforces the understanding that anti-cult missionaries are not just men in black robes. They are soldiers, zealots, agents serving their master. Who that master is, only they know. But this certainly has nothing to do with God. On his blog in 2014, Alexander Neveyev did not restrain himself or hold back in expressing his radical anti-Ukrainian views. Iryna Kremenovska made no effort to hide her endorsements of Russian expert Alexander Neveyev in her articles and videos. In fact, she was actively promoting him in Ukraine's information space. While Neveyev was spreading hatred toward Ukraine, Kremenovska was publicly promoting him in Ukraine. Just take a look at what he was saying. There are countless quotes that could be cited. This naturally raises the question, was Iryna Kremenovska aware of this? Of course she was, and she acted with full awareness. For example, in a YouTube video dated December 6, 2018, she explicitly recommends listening to the opinions of Neveyev, a candidate of psychological sciences, and even includes a direct link to his content.
That's a separate topic, and here I recommend paying closer attention to the opinion of an expert, candidate of psychological sciences, Alexander Neveyev. You'll find the link to the video in the description.
Here's an article dated February 21, 2014, in which Neveyev divides Ukraine into Kokli and Ukrainians, and suggests redrawing the state borders accordingly. You know, in my opinion, there's something else that unites these two, Dvorkin and Iryna Kremenovska. It's the clear signs of psychological disturbance and in their behavior, in their speech, in thoughts they express, in their writings and motives. This becomes especially evident when reading the section *ALLATRA Creative Society in the second volume of Dvorkin's Sect Studies, Totalitarian Sects, and in virtually every article authored by Iryna Kremenovska on the Vilnius-Lovo website. It's their mocking, voluptuous pleasure in humiliating others. Sadistic tendencies. Probably the same is experienced by maniacs who slowly kill their victims, reveling in their torment. Personally, I can't explain their motives and actions in any other way. It's as if they found each other through shared mental sickness. Tell me, can a mentally healthy person truly feel joy in humiliating others? Yet they do. Yes, it's visible. The legal case aimed at banning the public organization *ALLATRA in Ukraine has been dismissed by the courts not once, but 4 times. Iryna Kremenovska herself wrote about it in separate articles on her website, Vilnius-Lovo. And despite the smear campaigns and clearly orchestrated provocations against *ALLATRA, the Ukrainian court dismissed the case once again, for the 5th time, in early April 2025. Here is the official document. Whatever anyone says, the fact remains. Common sense has prevailed in Ukraine 5 times. In stark contrast to the disgraceful state of Russian justice, which can hardly be called a trial. The story of a farcical trial held a year and a half ago in the small Russian town of Plost-Chelyabinsk region was covered in the first episodes of this investigation. It all began with Konstantin Putnik, a devoted follower of Dvorkin's totalitarian sect. So, in her articles on Vilnius-Lovo, Kremenovska vividly details her years-long efforts, which, according to her paymaster's plan, were supposed to lead to the shutdown of Allatra in Ukraine, following the precedent set in Russia. The same plan also aimed to trigger criminal prosecution of Allatra participants in Ukraine, just as had happened in Russia. There was a mastermind behind this process. Nothing happens on its own. This is obvious. Iryna Kremenovska described her monumental effort on her Vilniuslovo website. I quote, "This was somewhere in 2023, an incredibly difficult path that we overcame through our collective efforts. Despite all obstacles, we didn't give up. On the contrary, we support each other. The most valuable thing is that the people who started it all are still one team, a team, and it has grown. There are more of them now. I thank my lucky stars that I have met. Your humble servant was engaged in drafting conclusions." She is referring to herself. What is that if not an organized community that was part of the international criminal structure of RACIRS? Who is part of it? Let's take a look at her. The chief tormentor of Ukraine, Alexander Dvorkin. You heard that right. More on that later. On the Vilniuslovo website, I was intrigued by another fragment written by Kremenovska, her opinion on Alexei Sviatogor about themselves. Here's the quote. "Alexei is an even more crisis maker and collaborator than I am. We are just doing our job. And this is not just journalism, it's much more. Alexei is not just my partner. He is the architect of RACIRS and the relentless founder of other people's downfalls. This work is something more than journalism." One question keeps spinning in my head. What in reality were these two actually doing? This is also a question for the investigation. Look further. For 8 years, she kept pestering investigators, the SBU, the prosecution, and else to do. And here's the result. Searches, suspicions, ruined reputations, interrogations, with thousands of participants facing troubles, stress, and family tragedies. Thousands of victims. So what do they deserve after all the above? Now, key question. What motivated Kremenovska and her group to engage in this years-long persecution? What drove her to relentlessly pursue the Allatra organization in Ukraine for 8 years? The victims? The cultists? That's a laugh. There aren't any. Just a couple of resentful egotists who expected to be showered with praise for their one day spent in a volunteer organization. If you can, go ahead and help if you can. Don't interfere. You came, you left. Freedom of choice. What's the problem? It's only the resentful who have a problem. If you want, you can talk about the climate threat, get involved, record videos, and inform the public. If not, you just go and mind your own business. I'm going to post the video now and get back to my own affairs, earning a living. That's it. But let's return to the question. What drove Kremenovska to pursue the Allatra organization in Ukraine? She turned down 4 times. Yet she kept pushing and pushing everyone. But how does that work, damn it? Let me put it another way. Who would engage in this for free? For years. I can only imagine the financial costs involved, how much time was spent watching videos and reading books. She wrote opinions and articles for the website, traveled to meet people and get to know them. This person initiated legal proceedings 5 times. Can you imagine how much time and money that took? Let me share my opinion. It's usually done by people who are paid very well. Nobody's gonna do it for free. It's unrealistic, especially people like Kremenovska and Sviatogor. Have you seen them in person? For those who made it to the end of this video, there's a surprise. I apologize in advance for the quality. YouTube refused to let this video through, but I believe Ukrainian society must watch this to understand whether they really need such members at all.
Today we have gathered in front of this institute to inform them that a murderer, a ruthless woman, is working next to them.
This outraged crowd outside the institute in Kiev wants to catch and tear apart a single person, a respected research associate, accused of mercilessly killing dogs.
Как оказалось, 1 сентября
As it turned out, by the 1st of September in Irpin, dog hunters announced a cynical act. They began killing all dogs on the streets without distinction or rest. The entire town turned into a sheer nightmare.
I don't know how anyone can watch this. It's traumatizing. What does a child feel in such a situation?
I think at least 100 dogs died over the past week or so. 5, 7 dogs that
blame for the deaths of all these dogs does not a cruel person.
Every household should hold in on hand, and another one for cases when a stray dog or a pack wanders into the yard. Just 10 pills said to have some kind of homeopathic effect, and the dogs relocate and disappear.
Aren't they suffering?
Are we some kind of sadists to torture dogs?
What's happening in our city lately is pure hell. Every day dead dogs are found in the streets. People hear them howling at night. We were just relaxing, having coffee. It was 6 in the evening, the city center, full of people and kids. Then we saw a dog come up. And at first we didn't understand what was wrong. We just noticed it was in distress. The dog collapsed to the and then the convulsions began. It was shaking violently. It tried to get up, to run away, to come back. It was running toward people. I tried to hold it back so it wouldn't run into traffic. It was poisoned. Then the foam started coming out of its mouth. It smashed its head on the asphalt. The way they die in those convulsions, they lose all control. It's horrific. The dog literally died in our arms, gasping, screaming for 20, maybe 30 minutes, just screaming. It's awful. An absolutely horrifying sight. I don't even know how to describe it in normal.
That was already a few weeks ago, but even now, when you talk about it, you still get tears in your eyes.
It was in front of my eyes. The kids were crying standing there. Mothers were pulling them away because the howling was terrifying. The screams echoed through the entire city center.
How long has this been going on?
The first cases started in June. Now in August, it's happening on every street. They're all gone, but shit to be us. So people hear dogs howling in pain at night, in the daytime. They come out of their buildings and find a dog lying there, foaming at the mouth. They are everywhere.
What people are you talking about?
The ones doing this, the dog hunters. You can read their comments on social media, how they take pleasure in it, how they savor what they've done. I just don't understand how anyone can write or talk about it so calmly.
As it turns out, there are plenty of official websites for dog hunters. One headline reads, "Attention, Action." From August 20th to 31st, 2016, an international campaign is issued for the elimination of stray dogs to prepare residential areas for the safe return of children to school.
No one in the city was left indifferent. Even those who used to be against dogs, the ones they saw how horribly these animals were dying, they were outraged. Everyone in the city is furious.
There's no plan to safeguard the city from stray dogs. There is a plan to just kill animals because it's all done indiscriminately. And this killing happens in a rather brutal way. The adult who saw it remembers it to this day, and this picture still haunts Taya every day. And what happens to the children?
Dima, that's exactly the point. The children who saw this, these are children who will carry physical and emotional consequences for the rest of their lives. This is trauma, deep trauma, some things a child's mind simply can't process. Ever. I'm speaking as a mother, as a citizen, as a human being. I am horrified that this is happening here, to us. I can't even imagine sitting here today and watching that woman, that creature, who smiled on screen and talked to me about home medicine cabinets. Dima, sitting here today is almost unbearable.
Given their bloodlust, they won't stop there. They'll want to go further, to cleanse the streets of people who, in their view, behave or homeless people.
Horrible as it sounds, there's definitely a grain of truth in what you're saying. It's a psychological urge to torment someone weaker.
What we're seeing is a justification, yes, a justification for this sadistic drive. Sadism is undoubtedly a pathology. And I absolutely agree with you that the homeless will be next, than anyone behaving in a way they deem inappropriate or disruptive.
We've seen this before. Everyone remembers the Nutpro maniacs, those who beat people with hammers and filmed it all. When their case was investigated, it turned out they started with animals. In Irpin, women are particularly active among the dog hunters. They seem to know something.
No, until this summer, I had no idea someone like that lived in our town. Now I'm scared just knowing we walk the same streets. If someone is capable of this, all it takes is something snaps in their head.
This woman, the one who could snap at any moment, is a lawyer. She works at a Kyiv university and is writing a dissertation. The worst part is, Iryna herself is convinced that she's doing the right thing. Iryna Kremenovska, welcome.
Good day.
Shame, shame, shame.
Do you understand why people are reacting this way? Well, you have a hobby. You're a dog hunter, right?
I have a lot of hobbies, but stray dogs should be subject to disposal, as provided for by the law of Ukraine on protection.
Disposal? What do you mean by that? Aren't you just poisoning the dogs?
Which ones exactly? Names, locations,
What do you mean?
dates,
Iryna, don't take me for an idiot. You personally poisoning dogs?
picked up off the street.
Iryna, once again, that wasn't my question. I'm not asking if you were bitten by dogs.
At the moment, I had no other choice.
I'm asking you, do you poison dogs?
As well as rats, cockroaches,
No, stop.
mosquitoes,
and
Why do you do this?
municipal services when no one responds. If the dogs
So you took it upon yourself to handle it in this rather peculiar way. Did I understand you correctly?
For many years, Ukraine has had this program called Catch, Sterilize, Return. Yet we decided to follow the Indian model. And we all know the terrifying statistics from...
We're just going to retell this. She's just talking complete rubbish.
So how exactly does it work? What are you using to poison them?
It's not poison, it's a medical drug, an anti-tuberculosis medication. So it does, as far as I know from reading about it on Google, I'm not a vet, but they say that after taking it, dogs become very calm, stop biting, and move to another
They disappear?
area.
What, do they just dissolve?
AC, I don't know. We just stopped seeing them.
You know what actually happens to dogs after this drug enters their system?
Well, it cures tuberculosis, that's for sure.
But you clearly aren't trying to treat them for tuberculosis, are you? You're trying to kill them this way.
Iryna, I'd like to ask you to use your imagination right now and try to describe what a biological species called a dog feels when it gets a dose of the substance you're giving
I think
it.
the nervous centers shut down, consciousness disconnects. Well, it's a state similar to euphoria.
What do you mean by euphoria?
Uncontrolled motor activity, maybe. After all, the packs disappear. They really do scatter.
You mentioned the nervous system. Tell me, do you think this biological species experiences something like pain?
Absolutely all living beings feel pain. Yes, including farm animals, which we all consume. Chickens, for example.
Wait a minute.
I heard you.
Let's not get off track. The point of the question is different. If an animal is terminally ill, it is taken to a veterinary clinic where it is euthanized. Humane, right? It doesn't have what you called
Euphoria.
Euphoric convulsions. Yes.
Why not? In veterinary clinics, the drugs used for humane euthanasia of animals have a similar effect to...
No, that's not true.
That's a lie.
Some people say that when this drug enters the dog's body, the dog just falls asleep. That's not true. The dog suffers a lot. Loss of consciousness, disrupted motor coordination, blocked respiratory center, seizures, increased blood pressure. Sometimes their eyeballs even...
I've never seen such cases where a dog was...
Let me show you so you can see.
Street.
But promise me you'll watch this video until the end, okay? Does that look like euphoria? No, what you see here is definitely not what happens in a vet's office when they have to euthanize a sick animal, right?
I've never observed a vet killing an animal. I haven't had the experience.
But you've observed your own actions, right? How is the dog moving? Why not? You should make sure the drug actually got to the dog. What if a cat ate it? Or a child?
The child couldn't possibly pick it up because the dog is fed the drug strictly by hand, directly into the dog's mouth.
So you personally hand feed the dog the drug?
Stray dog.
Yes, personally by your hand?
Only this way.
This woman is hand-feeding the poison to dogs that don't even pose a threat.
Unexpected twist. Well, never mind.
I've seen many times how people on the street feed something to dogs. So you have to understand that the feeding area is the dog's territory.
And where the dog's territory is, it will guard it against any
Changing the
intruders.
subject so smoothly, but I would still like to hear an answer to my question. You hand feed the dog this poison, and then you don't observe what happens? Then why do you give them the medication?
To treat them for tuberculosis, it's not poison, it's a medical drug. To treat them for tuberculosis, it's not poison, it's a medical drug.
And have you diagnosed them?
All stray dogs,
What, have tuberculosis?
they spread a whole range of dangerous diseases.
Look, you just said you don't observe what happens to the dog afterward, but I don't understand. Why should children see this?
I ask myself, what's worse for a child, seeing a dead dog or losing an eye, a limb, or even their life, becoming disabled?
Are you familiar with the statistics on animal attacks on children?
Yes, I've studied the statistics.
So tell me, let's talk specifically about the city of Irpin.
In general, across Ukraine, starting from 2008, the number of attacks, the number of injury reports specifically involving children began increasing by 25 to 30%. These are data from scientists who researched the entire statistics of reports.
And how many children exactly? Because if there were 2 children across all of Ukraine and then it increased by 20%, what's that? Quarter of a child?
Dog just ran
Give
by.
me the actual numbers. How many children are attacked by dogs per year?
In recent years, this number hasn't gone down at all in the city.
Can you give me the exact number? How many? Rina, how many exactly? Can you give any number?
I analyzed both the statistics of bites and attacks, including from stray dogs, and published this in a scientific article. There are a lot of numbers. I can't list them all off the top of my head right now, and the journal is Mathematical Modeling and Economics.
But if this is your scientific article, you must remember.
I have over 100 scientific papers, among them on issues of national security, business
I'd like
law.
to read what this person writes on social media, on Facebook.
Irina posts on social media?
Exactly, Irina. I open the window a bit, listening. Will I hear the screams of "Hello, Rainbow"? The symphonies are long to describe, but in short, they can last a long time, and sometimes they happen at all. Once at the summer house, I fed a pack on our street in the morning, around 8 a.m. The symphony, or rather the choir, started after 10 and lasted for 2 hours.
The lady is enjoying
You
herself.
seriously think a dog's death howl is a symphony?
Well, of course not.
Then why did you write it?
I didn't. I have a Facebook page, but there's definitely nothing like that posted there.
There's a forum where you can write these things. Here we see a screenshot from a dog hunter forum. Do you know who Capybara is?
I have no idea. Lots of people post on different forums, cooking forums, and
Well, there are people who say you are Capybara.
my colleagues know me by my regal name because I have nothing
Then
to
I have
hide.
some interesting news for you. Quote, in 2015, animal rights activists managed to hack the Vreditellium.net, no to pests, as forum. They provided us with the private messages of one of the users with a person who calls themselves the main dog hunter of Ukraine, Alexei Sviatogor. His messages strongly suggest that Iryna Kremenovska registered on the forum under the name Kopybar.
Oh my God, Dima. I thought the worst thing was the footage you showed on TV of a dying dog. But what we're seeing here in this studio is even worse, even sadder. There's a young woman sitting here, completely denying everything that people have been striving for over thousands of years. Love, empathy, warmth.
How do you explain what's happening here? I mean, if you're supposedly doing a good thing, why is there so much negativity toward you?
Where does all this negativity come from? It's it's artificially stirred up, Sakina. The dog hunters are hated not so much for poisoning stray dogs. Dog hunters are hated for their stance on justifying the unacceptable presence of these packs on the streets, in schools, and kindergarten.
So you're saying that all these people are idiots who don't understand that stray dogs on a playground are a problem? No one here understands
For some
that?
people, stray dogs are actually a source of income.
More specifically, begging for donations from trusting citizens supposedly for treatment or for temporary
Then why are
shelter.
they angry at you?
Because we're disrupting their schemes, especially regarding...
Who here, among us, has any kind of schemes? Come on. No, Irina, really. You're kind of going way too far. By his own choice, the head of the local police department. Thank you very much for that.
Of course, I regret that Article 299 is so lenient towards such people. Not the right word, really. Honestly, I'm not an emotional person by nature. It's just the nature of my job. But even so, it's hard to hold back emotions. We're looking at these dog hunters right now. And why are we even calling them dog hunters? First of all, they are sick sociopaths. What we initially rejected outright and now are even willing to discuss that, is the problem of society, also known as the Overton window. Things that society once would never accept gradually get talked about and normalized. And these sick critters, they're proud of it. They talk about it, they become recognized. This is a real problem. I mean, we're already calling them dog hunters, right? What kind of hunters are they? They're animal abusers, sadists, sociopaths. And that's the truth.
These people are getting massive attention. They get satisfaction from the suffering, a sadistic satisfaction, almost sexual in nature.
The country's #1 animal abuser, Alexei Svyatogor.
Good afternoon.
Sit down.
Well, you have a very peculiar reputation. What's your attitude toward dogs?
Positive.
So tell me, you're accused of poisoning them.
You see, technically, it's impossible to poison a dog for one simple reason. A dog is a domesticated animal, a pet attached to humans. People just sometimes confuse beings that used to be dogs and still look somewhat like them, kind of the way chocolate resembles excrement.
So,
Let's not go there.
When you see a stray dog, what do?
You know, any sane person can tell the difference between a dog and a non-dog. You asked, I answered. Well, I'm doing my best here.
Using the phrase, every healthy person is manipulative. I'm speaking with you, and I want to hear your personal opinion. Are you capable of speaking for yourself?
Yes.
Great.
I can tell the difference between a wild stray dog and a lost pet.
And when you see one, what do?
When I see one, I feed it liverwurst if I have it with me. That contains a pharmaceutical preparation.
Why do you decide to kill the animal?
There are a lot of lawyers here in the studio, and the word kill...
On what grounds do you decide to give a dog a substance that will inevitably make it die?
To prevent the danger of these supposedly cute, good, fluffy animals forming packs that sometimes maul people.
If I suddenly found your appearance thuggish and to prevent you from forming a gang, decided to take preventive measures, would you be okay with that?
No, I would not be okay with that, because I don't even understand how you can compare humans and dogs.
How many dogs have you given this substance to?
I don't remember.
Hundreds?
Let's just say more than a few dozen.
First of all, you're lying. I'll say more. I even saw an interview where you said you killed over 1,000.
Well, I don't remember.
Why you bragged about it to others, but not to us.
You see, listen.
In our studio is animal rights advocate Yulia. She was forced to change her residence and her appearance because she fears for her life and her son's life. According to her, you threatened her.
And me too. I have a recording.
And there are others as well.
And profanation.
Absolute lie and profanation.
There's the police. Go to them, prove it. Recordings and all
I
that.
have a screenshot of your messages. Alexei Svyatogor writes, as for that Komenko woman, we'll find a way to deal with her. Sorry. Bitch will pay for everything. What else is written here?
Should have shot her legs with a shotgun at the moment when I'm feeding stray animals or helping my clients. So I would I guess.
Was that written by you?
Looks a lot like my account.
A lot like it, yes. This is the very account through which you were contacted and the interview was arranged. Therefore, if you replied through this account and showed up for the meeting, then this account...
Or the police. I get it. They'll catch me in a cell and all the rest. I get it.
In a cell, if you even make it that far past pre-trial detention.
Would you look at the lawyers nowadays, huh? They broke into my door, around 40 young pubescent males.
On July 28th, when info was posted
they
on
came up
social
the
media,
stairwell.
and there were
on
calls
March
for vigilante
3rd,
justice.
March 3rd, they prepared, wait a minute.
Who are you even talking to right now, Irina? I'm just curious. Why the sudden outburst while we're having a conversation?
Just my opinion as someone watching all this. Honestly, based on the things happening in your personal life, with your car and so on, I assure you, my opinion is like a prediction. Soon you'll be going to the police yourself with complaints. Injuries, worse. You're choosing this path yourself. You're choosing this yourself. You're asking for trouble.
You know, what you're doing disgusts me. I truly hope you get caught.
So, how does it feel? Disgusted yet? At the start of the film, I promised I'd show you how you will be mind-fucked. That's if you're still one of those people who thinks Allatra is some kind of cult. Look, for 7, 8, even 10 years, these totally fuck-up lunatics kept trying to convince Ukrainian society that Allatra was a terrifying totalitarian sect. But who would even listen to them, you might say? She's not even sane. She is insane. And yet, 7 years later, that creature shows up on a primetime expose on national TV. The Ukrainian Sensations Project. In what role? As a top expert.
Dogged by Allatra is a cult expert, Iryna Kremenovska, who's been studying the organization's activities for nearly 10 years. And it was Iryna who, with just one phrase, pushed us towards solving the biggest mystery. Who is the real god of Allatra?
From the very beginning, they could have been receiving some kind of funding from the Russian Federation.
Wait, what? Allatra and Russia?
It was Iryna, it was her. With just one phrase, pushed the journalist toward solving the mystery. Are you fucking kidding me? Russian agent of RACIRS, Iryna Kremenovska, shit Russian propaganda straight onto Ukrainians' heads, an element of Dvorkin's subliminal implant. Many people ate it up and applauded in unison. Sorry for the language, but honestly, I don't know how else to put it. People, doesn't all this make you sick to realize? They're screwing us over. They're seriously trying to kill everything good inside us. And we're just letting it happen. Why? Because everything's for sale. Money rules. To wrap this up, I want to show a clip from Igor Chalakian's video, Siberia Who Stands to Gain by Wiping Out Half the Planet. It adds to the topic and explains it even more clearly.
And this is what is particularly crucial. Dvorkin's cult and its global operatives are actually easy to identify. They use the same rhetoric, repeat the same memorized phrases, and apply the same methods of psychological manipulation, from hypnotic techniques to brazen lies, all disguised as truth. When someone begins to speak using rhetoric that echoes Dvorkin's ideology, know this: they are his people. They are recruiting. They are coding new followers. And what always follows in their wake: persecution, violations of rights and freedoms. And now imagine this: the entire totalitarian machine, armed with near limitless power, has been unleashed against Allatra participants for one simple reason: because they chose to speak the truth about the threat of the Siberian magma plume. Dvorkin and his followers have deployed the full force of their cult, every connection, every lever of influence, to first discredit the participants of Allatra and the scientific data they presented. This is not just in Russia, but also in Ukraine and across European countries as well. Following this orchestrated campaign of defamation in 2023, Allatra, by Dvorkin's order, was declared an undesirable organization in Russia. Former participants faced raids, criminal prosecution based on falsified expert opinions, interrogations involving torture, and prison sentences. Under such pressure, hundreds of former Allatra participants were forced to flee Russia. Meanwhile, Dvorkin's sect has begun using the same playbook in Ukraine. Today in Ukraine, this cult aligned with Dvorkin has succeeded in initiating criminal prosecutions against decent people, Allatra participants, law-abiding Ukrainian citizens who have harmed no one but have tried to share the truth about natural geophysical disasters and global threats. These individuals are now being targeted as defendants in fabricated criminal cases orchestrated by Dvorkin's cultists. They are being persecuted under the same tactics employed in Russia, and all of this is being carried out by the adherents of Dvorkin's cult. What do the accusations against ALLATRA in two such different countries as Russia and Ukraine have in common? Everyone affiliated with Dvorkin's cult can be unmistakably identified by their uniform ideological, methodological, and linguistic template. They rely on the same aggressively persistent techniques of manipulation and suppression. And once you recognize their signature, it becomes clear that the defamatory narratives forming the basis of the accusations against the ALLATRA movement, both in Russia and in Ukraine, are identical. They literally mirror each other. This cannot be a coincidence. It is the mark of a single, centralized source, the hand of Dvorkin's cultists. The same individuals who fabricated charges against ALLATRA participants in Russia continued their work in Ukraine and are now driving the same slanderous campaign rhetoric across Europe. The same narrative of defamation, the same tactics, the same methods long practiced by Dvorkin and his followers. And right now, those very methods are being deployed against ALLATRA in Ukraine. And we can see this clearly from America. So the question must be asked, are the responsible agencies in Ukraine genuinely unaware of this, or do they simply choose not to see it? I have recently received reliable information that certain members of the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, and the Office of the Prosecutor General of Ukraine are aware that the primary instigator behind the persecution of ALLATRA volunteers in Ukraine is an agent of the Russian RACIRS organization. So I ask only one logical and inevitable question. How is it possible that no criminal investigation has been that this agent initiated ALLATRA participants in Ukraine contains accusations manifestly similar to those same trumped-up criminal charges pursued in Russia, down to the very finest details? It should be vividly clear to any investigator that participants is entirely fabricated and scripted by Dvorkin himself. Why is it that we, here in America, can clearly see manipulations by Dvorkin's cultists taking place in Ukraine, but you, in your own country, do not? I am speaking directly to the Ukrainian intelligence services, members of the Verkhovna Rada, the country's leadership, and President Zelensky himself. Why is this agent of Dvorkin, known for his years-long harassment of the ALLATRA movement at the directive of RACIRS, still not under investigative oversight? Why is he still the primary complainant in a case built entirely on his own subjective judgments? This follower of Dvorkin has publicly admitted to targeting ALLATRA for more than 5 years. Moreover, his rhetoric and ideology are a direct copy of Dvorkin's totalitarian cult, and the case he initiated against ALLATRA participants contains accusations identical to those used in Russia, down to the very finest details. Is that not enough to recognize the influence of a hidden force within investigative and security institutions? Do you honestly not know who this person is, or are you simply pretending not to? Furthermore, it is clear to any judge, investigator, or legal expert that the case against the ALLATRA participants in Ukraine is entirely fabricated. Does this not indicate that a hidden force, a Russian parallel power structure, is now operating behind the Ukrainian government, steadily expanding its influence in Ukraine, using the very same methodology it once employed in Russia? In Russia, it has already seized enormous influence, and now in Ukraine, it is moving along the same path, advancing behind the backs of your own lawmakers, drawing them into the persecution of ALLATRA. The persecution of Allatra participants, both in Russia and in Ukraine, is not a criminal case, reflecting the persecution of individuals perpetrating criminal actions, but instead it is an act of political persecution carefully penned by a Russian author. It is conspicuously clear that this production is hallmarked by the House de la RACIRS out of Russia. I now address those within the Ukrainian Prosecutor's Office, the Security Service of Ukraine, and the judiciary. Remember that Article 19 of the Constitution of Ukraine exists. According to that article, all government bodies are required to act strictly on the basis of law. The law exists, and so does the people's trust in you. The people expect you to act in their interest, not in the interest of Dvorkin's Russian cult. Yet today, the actions taken in Ukraine against Allatra, copied directly from the Russian playbook, may indicate that there are individuals within Ukraine's law enforcement and judicial systems who are not serving the people's interest in Ukraine, but rather the interest of Dvorkin's cult. Otherwise, why does the accusatory rhetoric in Ukraine precisely mirror that used in Russia? What we are witnessing is a mockery of justice. And tragically, it is a vivid demonstration of the influence that Dvorkin's cult, rooted in Russia, has already gained over Ukrainian institutions. To support these very words, let me draw your esteemed attention to a video clip that cannot be ignored. In it, Alexander Dvorkin himself admits personally that he has agents operating inside Ukraine with whom he secretly maintains direct communication right now in the midst of a military conflict. These are not rumors or speculations. These are his own words, a direct quote.
Father Alexander Kuzmin, as Executive Secretary, can you tell us how many centers and members RACIRS currently has, and how do they coordinate with each other?
Well, most dioceses have missionary or catechetical departments within their structure, and most of the dioceses, as far as I know, are part of RACIRS. It even includes some centers in Belarus and also on the territory of Ukraine, yes? There are, and in Kazakhstan.
Yes, it used to be on the territory of Ukraine. Unfortunately unfortunately, the contacts have been cut off. I mean, I still have personal contacts, with a few people who are now in Ukraine and with whom I maintain friendly relations and a strong mutual understanding. But it's clear they are taking significant risks, and therefore we communicate only through verified channels. It's clear they cannot openly participate in RACIRS activities at this time. However, we do have a very active cult studies expert in RACIRS, a priest from Luhansk. Previously, he was an associate member because Luhansk was not part of the Russian Federation. But now he is a full member as a citizen from a territory that is now part of the Russian Federation. So that's the situation with our friends, colleagues, and like-minded partners in Ukraine. Well, we need to wait for this whole situation to be resolved so that our contact and open collaboration can fully resume.
You just heard it yourself. Dvorkin personally admits that he maintains contact with his cult's followers inside Ukraine. And it is they, acting on his orders, who are orchestrating the persecution of Allatra. Wherever the disciples of his cult begin to operate, constitutional rights end and repression begins. And it's always the same. One template, one signature, one method. Because it is one and the same repressive system, an international totalitarian cult led by Dvorkin, built on an extremist terrorist ideology. And the criminal prosecution of innocent Alachua volunteers is proof of that. That is why today I am speaking directly to those within Ukrainian institutions who are involved in the persecution of the Alachua movement. Those who have chosen to follow a foreign will instead of common sense and the law. Do you not realize that you are carrying out the orders of the head of a totalitarian cult, a Mr. Alexander Dvorkin? Then who in that case is the true traitor to your country? Those who are saving lives, those who have stood for years in defense of peace, those who are risking themselves for the safety of your children, your parents, your country, or those who are now acting on the instructions of a man from Russia, a man expanding his totalitarian cult, one deeply entangled in criminal activity. Are you truly prepared to obey Dvorkin's commands, forgetting your oath, your constitution, your conscience? Why is it that you, representatives of the Ukrainian government, are not defending the interest of the people, not the interest of humanity, but are instead actively persecuting those who are doing everything in their power to prevent the collapse of this world? Those who are trying to protect your loved ones, your families, and you. Please take a moment and ask yourselves this very simple question. Just whose interest are you serving? The interest of Dvorkin's totalitarian cult. These are people who, while being the embodiment of an extremist and authoritarian force, label anyone who opposes them as a cult to distract from their own sectarian nature. But they've gone even further. They've declared the entire nation of Ukraine a cult. Yes, the entire country. Every member of parliament, every citizen, the president, and yes, you, prosecutors, investigators, judges, and even your children, all without exception, according to their deranged logic, are cultist. According to their rhetoric, Ukraine is a cult that must be destroyed. That is not my interpretation. These are their own words, published on their own official platforms. Here I am providing you with real, not fabricated evidence. They have already declared Ukraine is a cultic state. These are the very words of their own so-called experts, analysts, and theologians of the Dvorkin cult. This is rhetoric crafted to legitimize brutal violence. It is extremism in its purest form. And it is these very people, these followers of Dvorkin and a Russian totalitarian extremist and pro-religious structure that openly wishes harm upon Ukraine, who have attacked the Alachua movement and are now actively securing levers of influence within Ukraine itself. So answer this one question. How is this even possible? Their goal is to prolong the conflict. They are not merely willing to accept war. They are interested in nuclear escalation. They are the ones pouring gasoline on the fire. It was they who, in the midst of this war, were publicly spreading calls for a nuclear strike against Ukraine. And today, under their influence, innocent people are being targeted. Any rational legal expert who reviews the case materials against Alachua would say the very same thing. This is not a criminal case. It is a farce. And this fabrication has a clear purpose: political persecution. Everyone involved in this process knows the absolute truth. The SBU knows, the courts know, the police know, which brings us to the fundamental question: why has Dvorkin's cult been allowed to hold power in Ukraine? In Russia, it's sadly understandable. There they've embedded themselves into the system. But in Ukraine, how did this happen? Who allowed it? I appeal to all members of the Ukrainian parliament and to President Vladimir Zelensky. Put an end to this judicial travesty. The whole world is watching you. Even here in America, we are closely following this case. What is happening now is a coordinated operation that points to only one conclusion. Hidden forces within Ukraine are serving Dvorkin's cult. There is no other explanation, neither from a political standpoint nor from a human one. The volunteers of Allatra are in reality true heroes. Despite the hell inflicted on them by Dvorkin's cultists, despite the lies, the smear campaigns, the arrest, the trials, despite their shattered reputations, despite even being persecuted by the very people they are fighting to protect, they continue to fight for your children, for your parents, for your loved ones, and yes, for your life too. Why has there been no response to the fact that they are being prosecuted under a fabricated case? Why is it that someone, a follower of Dvorkin, acting in the interest of RACIRS, someone who has slandered true heroes, not only heroes of Ukraine, but of the entire world, still holds such influence over your institutions, over your SBU, your police, your prosecutors, your courts? Why?